Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Week 6 RotoGrinders NFL Daily Fantasy Recap Show, a.k.a. the Gillcast. The original Gillcast crew is here. Myself, Davis Mattek. You can find me on Twitter at Davis Mattek. Sammy Reid, you can find him at Sammy Reid FI. Nate Nohling, you can find him at Big Giant Ball of Fish. He's on big extreme life tilt right now. Something just happened. He was trying to explain it to Sammy and I, but I think his computer is deleting itself right now. Do you care to expound for the people, Nate?
No, I mean, nobody will understand. I got a new laptop this week in my my database. I just reinitialized it on accident, my SQL database of Game Center API data. So I have nothing to talk about for today's slate.
Nerd problems.
So you definitely couldn't go look at box scores though. Like none of that would be helpful to like talk about what we're talking about.
Box scores? Who looks at box scores?
You
have to like scrape box scores into like a database.
What do you think when Sammy and I are talking about like target numbers and yards and stuff, like what do you think we're using when we're on this show?
How do you guys like summarize like actual like opportunity? How do you guys summarize like, oh, this guy got 4 touches within the within the 5-yard line?
See,
like,
Nate, I actually have
the David Johnson tilt isn't real unless you realize that he had like 5 opportunities at the goal line that he didn't convert.
See, Nate, sometimes ignorance is bliss. Like, I have a database. I have a giant supercomputer, and it's called my freaking brain spot. And I just do all this stuff in my brain and spit it out and make awesome lineups, and that's how it goes.
I mean, I watch the games, so that's how I know.
Also watch the games?
Yeah, like I just watch the games on Sunday, so that's how I know.
Yeah, how else would you tilt with it? You just look at your database and tilt?
He just looks at his database and he's just like, the opportunity is not meeting the expected result, and I'm furious about it.
It's like Neo in the Matrix looking at the code like flowing down. He's like, there's the lady in the red dress. There's the guy on the 1-yard line. You didn't convert now.
So another reason Nate is mad is that he had an export error today, which, Nate, is it the first time it's ever happened to you?
I've had it happen in NBA. I think it's probably the first time I've had it happen in football just because, I think it's probably the first time I've had it happen in football.
I've never had it happen in NFL, but I can guarantee you if it did happen, I would be like unreal depressed. We only get 17. We only get 17 of these weeks. You know, it's 1/4 of the year.
Yeah, it was I mean, literally, I saw it 4 seconds before lock and realized that I had exported my GPP team as my cash, as one of my GPP like single entry teams that I'd hand built like as cash. And I mean, I noticed it like 4 seconds before. I think I texted you guys like at lock and just said frick, like I'm done.
You did, and then you basically had a ADHD team in cash.
Yeah, I mean, it was rough.
Did you have Maurice Harris in that lineup?
No. I was actually debating playing Maurice Harris in cash for real, though.
I played Maurice Harris in cash. We'll get
It's starting, friends. The Gillcast is here, Maurice.
Oh, my gosh.
Hey, he was my second highest scoring wide receiver, Nate.
I will say, like, the whole like they were all dead. Like, nobody was playing. Like, it had to go somewhere.
Except we'll get more into it later when I talk about my lineup. But Sammy gets to start the show today because he scored. How many points did you score? It has to be an absurd number.
189.4 in cash.
It's a lot of points.
It was good. I mean, it was like I made a bunch of GPP lineups. I probably made not a bunch, like less than usual. I made 10, and my cash team was easily my highest scoring team.
So all three of us, unanimous. Wasn't even a thought, Winston. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't debate it for a second. Like
me neither. He was the first quarterback you put in on Monday, and then you never changed it. And it was super easy. He was 52.5% owned in the massive $25 single entry double up. Do you think that's too low? Is that fishy?
I thought he was going to be higher.
I won't ever nitpick quarterbacks just because Winston had like the stone nuts absolute best day. He was the highest scoring quarterback, and like I mean the quarterback 8 got what, like 12 points less than him. So it's just not that, like, I won't ever hammer someone. Certainly there is an edge there, but I won't hammer someone just because the range of outcomes are really even so narrow.
Yeah, it's fair. That's fair. I like smashed Matt Ryan in GPPs because I was convinced he was going to have a bigger game than Winston.
I just did not have a good GPP strategy today. I'm like looking back at it, and I just was like stacking these games in really weird ways. Had a lot of Andy Dalton. He only threw 170 passing yards. Just like not really until showdown. Not my best performance as an NFL DFS player.
I was just really
Tyreek and the captain.
Yeah, I
I was
did.
just all over the Texans. I had a ton of Hopkins, Watson, Kiki. I mean, I was all over those guys.
Do you want to explain why you were so on the Texans?
I just thought there's going to be plenty of volume in it. I think I just thought they were going to throw a lot, and I think Deshaun Watson's one of those guys with his ADOT. I mean, he'll launch the ball down the field and he'll take shots no matter what. I mean, and so I think when I looked at volume, not into the whole defenses don't matter thing, but when you look at ADOT for a couple of these guys, the ADOT on both Kiki and Hopkins with their target projections, there was plenty of volume in that game to like, even versus a tough defense.
Hey, before we go into lineups, guys, can we talk a little bit about just how the morning was? Because I thought
this was crazy. It was the hardest for sure.
Right, because throughout the year so far, we've pretty much known everybody that was going to be out and in, by Schefter bomb Saturday night. And today was a whole lot different. There's a lot of stuff changing in the morning. Davis, like, how did when you saw this stuff happening, i.e. Dalvin Cook being out, that sort of stuff, how did that affect what you were doing, and how'd you deal with it?
Well, it's really hard because you get stubborn about things in NFL because you've had 5 days to think about it. Or like what Freeman was announced out on Thursday, I think. Yeah. So just like from that point, you're just like, oh, well, Freeman's out, so I'm just like locking in Tevin Coleman basically. And Latavius was probably like an equal point projection to him, like pretty close, especially given that they've been giving Ito all of the work, in the red zone. But I just didn't even consider it. I just didn't even really think about it on DraftKings. Like maybe I thought about it for like 10 minutes, and I don't know. It's easy to say in hindsight that it was bad to not think about it more, but we knew for a fact that Ito was going to take away red zone work from Tevin.
Well, the thing about Murray is that he was priced as though Dalvin Cook was playing, so he was 4.7. A couple weeks ago, when he was a giant home favorite against the Bills, which obviously didn't work out well, but that week he was 5.8, and it was basically the same situation. So, I mean, for me, you're getting $1,100.
And I mean, there was no denying it. There was definitely some recency bias of me being like, oh, well, they're just not going to use they were so bad in that Bills game, and it was just that was not my brightest moment.
I was afraid too, but that was, I think, a big key for me in cash, and a lot of people felt that way. He was 12.7% owned. 1 out of every 8 people went.
And if that Bills game doesn't happen, he's 37% or something.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct. I think there was a lot of recency bias. Obviously, the fact that it kind of happened out of nowhere this morning, everyone was kind of expecting Dalvin to be in, and then he had a setback in warmups or whatever. So a lot of people that don't pay that much attention didn't change it, but I thought that was a huge key.
So you had Coleman, Latavius, and Gurley.
That is correct. Yes.
So obviously Gurley smashed, and I don't think anyone ever expects him to do anything but smash. But I'm still of the mind that I do not think that he was the most optimal choice at running back today.
I mean, he was definitely the highest projection. I just didn't get to him because I don't know. I'd be interested to hear Sammy's thoughts. What was he owned?
He was 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 21% owned. For me, I had Gurley in all week, and I knew he wouldn't be that widely owned because I think there's something cognitive about that 10K that's even different than 9.8. People look at that, they're like, nah, son, that's 5 figures. I can't spend that on one player. But for me, he's just such a tier different than everybody else. And we talked about this last week that Potts is a big believer in grabbing the top of a tier if there's a big drop off. And I know it's easy to say, yeah, there's not a huge drop off to Mixon, Zeke, et cetera, guys that people were considering. But I thought there was. I didn't think that Zeke had the upside of Gurley. I didn't think that, like a guy like McCaffrey had the ceiling of Gurley. And so for me, it was just like, dude, Gurley's going to smash. This is a team that just gave up 200 plus yards to freaking Crowell. Like, this defense sucks ass. And lo and behold, it came to pass. So,
defenses don't matter. I would like to remind you that
every time we say that, drink. People are listening to this on Monday morning. If you have a little handle in your car or whatever, you're obligated to drink every time we say defenses don't matter. But there was a moment
encouraging drinking and driving, Sammy, because I would not.
No, I'm not. I'm sitting and smoking actually. But the point remains. I just think it was like there was a moment this morning where I almost got off of Gurley because everything was changing and this and that. And I looked at it and I'm like, I am such a fish if I don't play Gurley. My whole thing this week was play Gurley in cash. You will smash people who like are just fish and don't do that. And that's what happened.
Can we get into the Tevin play a little bit? Because I intended to play Tevin in cash, even though I didn't want to. I think Tevin was a play that I wanted to get off of in cash. I think the reason I ended up going to Tevin in cash is just because, as we were discussing it this morning, you guys were right. I mean, he was just so high owned that it was a bad move to fade him. But I actually think Tevin's usage is that he can't be considered a lock on DraftKings anymore.
No, because he plays like the same role. Like Ito just comes and plays the Freeman stuff. Yeah.
And I just think DraftKings, it takes such a high floor. Like, you have to be able to count on receptions to be able to boost, a running back's workload in this league these days, where I don't think a Tevin or anybody like that who you can't project safely for 5+ targets can be a lock, no matter the price on DraftKings.
Even at 5.4. I mean, my thinking with Tevin really was that in the 3 games Freeman had been out, he saw an average of 18 touches a game. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was reasonable with these teams, high scoring game. It's supposed to be a lot of plays run. I wasn't like in love with Tevin, but considering his ownership and considering that stuff, I know he wasn't an ideal play. I think you bring up a lot of really fair points about him. I thought he was fine in cash.
Because, here's the thing about 18 touches. If 18 touches of those are rushing attempts, like even at
way less.
Even at 4.5 yards per carry, which is like above average from a league perspective, that's only 8.1 DraftKings points. Like, he needs to get a touchdown then, or like 6 targets to have any sort of value.
He's been getting like 2 to 3 targets a game.
Yeah, so like 2 to 3 targets. But 8.1 points if he doesn't get that touchdown. So like when you get a high, even 20 rushing attempts these days just isn't valuable on DraftKings for a guy who's above like 4K. Like, it's just not.
I am really glad that I avoided playing TJ Yeldon though. He was in like all the optimals, like pretty much every. Yeah, I wasn't interested in him at all. Really,
I'm shocked that you didn't like TJ Yeldon. Like, this is very off-brand. Why did you not like Yeldon?
Because as much as defenses do not matter, I had the Cowboys and they were one of my picks on the super contest lines this week, and they play a gross pace, and I wanted Elliott, and I thought Elliott for $600 more. Like, it's not even close how much more superior of a play Elliott is. Like, Elliott was like a lock to me.
And if you had, and some guy tweeted earlier today, is like, hey, is it fishy of me to play 2 backs that are facing each other in a slow projected 40-point game? And I'm like, yeah, I think that's fishy, right? You didn't want to play Yeldon and Zeke. Like, that was really bad if you did that.
Also, like my projection that Yeldon would just play like 100% of the snaps for the Jaguars, not true. Jamal Charles came in 5 carries and had 2 targets as well to Yeldon's 5 targets. So that's like that backfield split is real, I guess.
Hey, you bring a Hall of Famer in, and it's like you gotta let the guy.
No, but it's wild. They cut Brandon Wilds. Like they cut the ostensible guy. It was just weird. Like,
what's Charles been doing? He's just hanging out eating Cheetos on the couch and playing Fortnite, and they're like, hey, come get some carries. He's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, so the reason, Sammy, why I think that your selection of Gurley was not super optimal, though, was partly because of defense. And, like, in general, that's, like, not a sharp thing to factor in.
No, here's you do one podcast with Frisco Josh, and you're like,
no, not defensive matchup. The defense I took on DraftKings.com.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Oh,
because I paid up $3,500 for the Bears.
Well, see, that was 33, I think, right? But
yeah,
that was still like a bad move, and
Texas.
pretty much everybody did that.
And you took the Cowboys,
Of course,
which was the correct play.
of course. I mean, I don't think I've paid more than $2,400 in cash for a defense all year. There's always one, and you can get so much value elsewhere.
The only defense you should ever do it against is the Buffalo Bills. No,
that's right.
No one else. No, but the Bills, the Texans, whoever is playing against the Bills, pay $4,000 for them. It doesn't matter. But everyone else, you should just get a $2,300 defense.
Yeah, I had a bunch of Bills in GPP because of the Josh Allen factor. But
he's crazy bad, and Peterman's somehow worse.
I mean, Peterman's just like he's like Bizarro Mahomes. It's crazy. It's just like
he's like what would happen if Mahomes had no velocity and was no natural feel for the game.
It's like if Mahomes had a lobotomy. That's Josh Allen.
So, Nate, your thoughts on the optimalness of Gurley and DK Cash?
I'll say this. I like Gurley from like in a vacuum standpoint. I just got stuck on Zeke.
Oh, yeah, you're the first guy to ever like Gurley in a vacuum.
I just got stuck on Zeke this week because I just thought Zeke was at his price. Like,
well, Zeke was not the issue. Zeke was a lock. The issue with the result of our lineup was with Tevin.
Yeah, I went – so, like, my intended DraftKings cash lineup was Zeke, Tevin, and DJ. Because I really thought DJ was a great play for his value, and I thought having three of those guys was the highest.
Let me tell you this. Let me tell you this about David Johnson right now.
Nate.
He is not optimal in any sense, and I don't care if he scored a touchdown. Or, like, you just got to stop. Like, everyone, no one has been a bigger booster of David Johnson than me. I loved him coming out of the University of Northern Iowa. That I touted him as many times as anyone could have ever touted anyone. Believe me. It's just not going to happen.
David Johnson, bro.
David Johnson as a receiver is not going to happen in the year of our Lord 2018.
That is, I'm sorry. That's a beta fish play. That's just.
No, dude.
Yes, dude.
No.
Yes, dude. It's so bad.
Nate, because anything you are wanting to play him for is based purely off of a projection of thinking he'll get more targets than he's got.
Dude, how can you play him on the road in this game? Like, how can you play him ever? It's over.
Dude,
it's over.
I mean, yes, it's crazy to see David Johnson for 5,900, but don't you? It's like also crazy to see Larry Fitzgerald for like 43.
Okay,
like,
no.
Who would even know?
Considering Fitzgerald?
No, I don't look at name value stuff like that. I mean,
Then defend David Johnson for 5.9 over Latavius Murray, who was cheaper on the good side of that game.
Latavius Murray hasn't caught a pass since 2004.
He caught a 3-yarder today. You take that back.
Latavius Murray hasn't caught a pass since 2004.
Latavius Murray, by the way, did actually project as a good receiving back coming out of college. Just so you know.
Got the player profiler up. Smooth.
I mean, yeah, that DJ was. I just felt like DJ was a better play than Tevin. For his price because
which actually might have been true.
Because of the passing work, and I went Tevin because I needed to go Tevin because it was just the optimal play in cash due to the way construction was going, and then I felt like I had to have DJ in there because I thought DJ was going to still score more.
do you realize like DJ scored when they were down like 17 points? How good you ran for DJ?
No.
DJ
had like five rushing attempts at the goal line where he was shut out, and it was so un-DJ like to see him just not be able to like.
Dude, it was
guess what? The whole team tripped.
He literally tripped once where there was just a defender on the floor, and I was like, "What are you doing, DJ?
Did you see this with your eyes, or are you watching it through the code?"
He's seeing that this is coded out. No, he's seeing it coded out. He's seeing how that he's literally reading like play by play, but in binary.
There's a guy on the ground. No, DJ trips.
I was like, so watching him fall over a guy on the ground when
So this is what I had different than you guys is I had Mixon in that spot where you guys had DJ, and Gurley. And I'm actually surprised that Nate did not end up on Mixon because
Mixon was a good play.
Mixon's volume projection was like he was projected for, I think, my second highest carries plus targets totals on the slate.
Yeah, I liked Mixon a lot. I think Mixon had the highest rushing attempt share of for sure of his team, and I think his target projection was pretty high up there too. I think I was struggling between, like, if I was going to pay up at running back there, it was a struggle between Mixon and McCaffrey, because I think McCaffrey just has such a unique workload as well, because I mean he plays almost every down for them. But McCaffrey is so hard to project from a target standpoint because it seems like Carolina one game can give him 11 targets in the next like 2.
Yes, like, and but it is easy to project him from a touchdown standpoint. You just plug in 0 and move on. You know?
But the thing is, you can't plug in a guy like him with 0 because of the fact that he breaks such, like, he's not a typical running back in that when he does run his routes are that of a former David Johnson type guy, where sometimes Christian McCaffrey does run down the field. Like he had a end zone target today that was like he was like in the end zone with a target, and so his touchdown equity is higher than I think people realize. I think people just go, "Oh, Cam's the goal line back," and you're right, but you know,
I mean, over the course of the season, though, you those splash plays will probably happen 6 times.
Yeah.
Like if he does,
I was going to say he's going to score 6 touchdowns this year.
If he doesn't get the goal line rushing, he's like capped at like 8 would be like the most I would expect.
And that's the big deal when I'm talking about ceiling. I mean, Zeke I thought was a great play. I didn't end up playing him, but
a 4 touchdown game is like Zeke could do that in the flow of the offense. Like they wouldn't have to do anything crazy for that to happen.
Yeah, Zeke's got a Gurley-like share of his team's touchdown equity where McCaffrey just doesn't. And I think most of the running backs who are high priced, like Gurley and Zeke, are the 2 guys who I think have the highest. Is it Gurley and Zeke? I think give me 1 second. I think Gurley and Zeke have the highest team of like their touchdown equity, highest share of that, which makes sense. Where McCaffrey just doesn't.
The thing about Gurley that you guys have to understand is you project him out and you regress the mean and all this stuff. We saw these guys last year, Tyreek Hill, et cetera, where it's like you keep expecting them to, Kamara, you keep expecting them to regress to the mean. But something that Silva told me that Reeves says all the time is football is won by outliers. Todd Gurley is an outlier. He is LaDainian Tomlinson.
He has the same career yards per touch as Isaiah Crowell.
Yeah, but he gets so many touches. And I mean, Crowell's underrated.
I mean, going into this week, Zeke actually had the highest in the league share of his team's touchdown equity.
Yeah.
And then it was Kamara, then it was Gurley, then it was actually Christian McCaffrey from a DK expected share. And then DJ, Melvin Gordon, Saquon Barkley. So it's like,
wait, are you talking about like fake touchdowns? Like,
I'm talking about, like, if you look at every play that a team has and the overall expected DraftKings points of a team's offense, who gets the highest volume?
Oh, you're talking about that ex-WOBA. I got you.
Yeah, but share of teams ex-WOBA. So like, not just like who gets targeted when the team isn't close to the end zone, but who gets targeted in the high volume. And Zeke is like, if Dallas scores, it's going to be through Zeke. Where McCaffrey,
no, it's going to be through Cole Beasley.
Like that's why today was so tilting, because Zeke should have had 5 touchdowns.
This is really alarming doing a podcast with you, Davis, because you look so much like Cole Beasley. Like, I feel like I want to ask you about the game.
I drafted Cole Beasley in the 25th round of the Fantasy Insiders Superflex Best Ball Dynasty League.
Oh, that's so hot.
so while my team is not very good, that part of it does feel pretty good.
Anyway, you guys are fish for not playing Gurley. Let's just throw that out.
I think Davis had a sharp play with Mixon. What did Mixon end up with?
Mixon was a sharp play.
Mixon
and so was Zeke. They just weren't Gurley. Like, you have to have some alphas on your team. Get an alpha. Gurley's an alpha.
Well, I went alpha.
Sammy,
I went alpha at tight end.
Sammy, what did you do at receiver?
I did Julio Jones, John Brown, and Chester Rogers. And Chester Rogers sucked out so hard. That was so great.
I'm so, like, that's probably why I didn't make money today, honestly. I think if Rogers doesn't catch that touchdown, I think I'm actually okay.
46% owned Chester Rogers.
People are so dumb. How dumb.
Davis, you were all over Chester Rogers.
Yeah, but he was like,
a good play.
he was like no, he was a thin play, I think.
Very.
I mean, yeah, but if you love every other spot in your lineup, you think it's all good, and he's super highly owned, and he's, I mean,
well, certainly I was not projecting Chester Rogers to be 45% owned in the single entry $25 double up.
Neither was I, but dude, he ended up with 10 targets. Luck threw it another 43 times.
That is, man, it's crazy how bad that football team is.
It's super bad. Like, but that's the thing. Like, volume for quarterbacks is kind of like, you know, you don't want to count it that much. Efficiency.
But for the receivers, though.
Yeah, dude, he's throwing the ball so much. Like, I thought he'd throw it more than 43 times. He actually ran bad. You know what I mean?
Rodgers, well, I don't think Chester Rogers ran bad, fella.
That touchdown was so hot. He was getting shut out until like the second half, and I was like, dude, this was bad. Why'd I do this?
Well, it certainly was not as bad as playing Maurice Harris was.
Let it out, Davis.
But let me tell you why it was actually bad.
Please.
It would have actually been a good play had Richardson not played.
Yes.
But what happened was Crowder being out didn't mean that Harris played more. It meant that Vernon Davis was playing more. Harris, when like the snap counts come out, I would be surprised to see Harris above like 55% of the snaps, whereas I bet Vernon Davis got a huge increase.
I mean, you shared with me that thing about Harris's college production this morning, and I looked at it.
He's like not a good player. He's like a total nothing. I was just literally hoping for 5 for 45.
I mean, it was just so thin. I mean, you had to like, I just can't imagine paying $3K for a receiver on this slate and then not getting Gurley with it. Like that
the reason that my team was so bad is that I was like really enamored with Jarvis Landry, and I mean, he had the worst game of his career. He had like 11 targets for like 16 yards.
Jarvis Landry was not a bad play. I am not going to dock you for Jarvis Landry. I thought he was a good play.
No, it's just really bad results, and Baker had a really bad game. And guess what? The Chargers defense is good. Chargers defense is quite good, and they have very good defensive backs.
Yeah, I don't think Jackson is still putting together the game plans for Cleveland, so that's a thing.
How many targets did he get?
9. He was 2 catches, 11 yards on 9 targets.
That just doesn't happen for Jarvis Landry. He's normally
they are not using him in the way the Miami coaching staff used him, though. He's like playing like a real wide receiver now, and
he's also not the best receiver on that team because David Njoku is there.
Well, and correct. Also, for whatever reason, the team is just like, okay, Antonio Callaway is going to drop touchdowns and run the wrong routes and never be open, but we're going to give him 10 targets a game anyway.
Well, that's the thing. They gave Callaway 10. They gave Damian Ratley.
What did Callaway end up with DraftKings points?
He ended up with 3, 2.9, 2 catches for 9 yards. Ratley got 8 targets. Dude, it was 46 attempts by Baker, plus 5 sacks. And only 9 targets for Jarvis. You know what I mean? Like, the gross number is good, but share-wise, this actually wasn't that great for him.
I mean, Callaway is horrible, man.
Oh my God.
Not good.
He's so bad. I had a buddy hit me up earlier this week, and he had heard that, you know, Cleveland's receivers were down, and he's like, Callaway and Cash? And I'm like, no, friend, do not.
Wide receivers matter.
Yes, they do. They do. So I don't think that Landry was a bad play. He's just not a priority play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's where I messed up. I did make him a priority play, and that's what got my lineup off this week. Because what I actually wanted to do was I wanted to do what you did originally. My original trio of wide receivers was Julio, John Brown, Chester Rogers.
Good group.
And then the Jamison Crowder inactive news came out.
You had to just jam Harrison. I mean, we can't make a big enough deal out of you playing Maurice Harris for American dollars on DraftKings.com.
Sammy, not only that, I like played more than normal this week too because I was like feeling pretty confident. I like entered games.
When you got Maurice Harris, you have to.
It's just like I looked at my lineup and I was like, I like all of this, and Harris like could be okay.
Can't lose.
I mean, it's bad.
But here's also, like, I got, like, you get that false confidence when other people are like, oh, no, Harris is, like, fine. And, like, a couple of
I mean,
like,
I don't want to, like, call, like, anybody out, but, like, dude, Smiz and Levitan and CSU, they're all sharp as hell. And they posted a screenshot of that 4-man, and he was 3 of the 4 people in that 4-man played him.
I mean, yeah, people had him in the higher, like, bigger games.
But yeah, but in this, I think he was only like 6-something% owned.
Well, I mean, that's because, like,
there's a bunch of squares.
Literally, probably a lot of people in the $25 entry, like, didn't know who he was. Like, didn't know that he, like.
I didn't know who he was. Also,
yeah,
I knew who he was because of Showdown last week.
Yeah, he was $200 and he was starting. It was huge.
Yeah, last week that's why you played him.
8 targets.
You played him because you got excited from Showdown last week.
Yeah, I played him because it let me get the Bears defense and Jarvis Landry with the other guys that I wanted.
Yeah, so you looked at every spot in your lineup and you're like, I like this a lot. And this one guy, he's a scrub, but if he sucks
but like
out
it's like okay, and you know what? It never works out that way.
No,
that guy always kills you.
Yeah, and let's talk about how that relates to Landry for a second, because when you do a lineup like that where it's a little more stars and scrubsy, if you're low owned, if you're like bad guy like Harris doesn't come through, and then
you
one
gotta
of
have
your
some
guys don't,
other guys.
Yeah, if one of your other guys don't come through, you're screwed.
But here's the thing though. Obviously, I'm fine if Landry gets 15. Like I would have been okay. But also, if Mixon would have had James Conner's game, smash day. I'm in a much better mood.
For sure.
And it's just like it's one of those things. Like Mixon only.
Don't you know the Steelers have a good rush defense?
I mean, dude, I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna be very real with you guys. Like for like all of like my like writing and fantasy football stuff, I used to keep up with that like pretty good. Like yards per carry allowed by defense, DVOA.
Yards per carry by defense, the noisiest thing.
Well, just like I'm just like naming stats, but like I used to look at that stuff on Pro Football Reference and Football Outsiders every week.
Yeah,
and I don't at all.
I haven't looked at DVOA for a year and a half now.
Yeah,
and
I'm over it.
Dude, I used to use it in my content, and I think that's one of the things is like, I had a long conversation with Frisco Josh last year over DMs because I really wanted to learn like what's predictive and what's descriptive, and he told me, he's like, dude, DVOA means nothing when looking forward. It's great
it
to
doesn't.
see what happened, but dude, there's no, and I just immediately said, wow, I've been making a mistake. But that's the thing you need to do. Like you need to constantly change, evolve, like learn, have an open mind. Keep learning what's better and what's not. And the sooner you do that, the sooner you make money because it takes like the public a while to figure that out.
And I mean, pretty much all of my content now is based about volume. Like it's all based on volume. And like now what I think the edge is with these games going to like overtime and so much scoring is predicting the games that like have that ability to have like, oh my God, that game ran 110 plays. Like that's like the stuff, that's the edge right now is figuring out the games that like can go to get like a bunch of extra plays in them.
Right. And then it's the game theory part, right? It's so much like game selection. It's lineup construction, understanding like what archetypes you want for cash and what types you don't, taking a holistic view of all that, like the game theory of DFS, to me, that's where the biggest edge is still and now.
Yeah. The more that volume becomes easy, the more that volume becomes what people are projecting instead of efficiency, the more that game theory is going to become important because volume is actually like one of the simpler things to project. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like if you want to have like decent projections in the NFL, like project targets, look at a receiver's ADOT, and then you can project out like what his air yards are going to be, what his efficiency is going to be on that. You can assume like league average touchdown rates and stuff like that. And you can get pretty close to a decent projection for people. Game theory is going to become where it's how like these lineups get built because the variance week to week in football, that's where it's at. It's not going to be in who's got the sharpest projections every week. It's going to be in the rest of the stuff because there's the variance week to week. Like we're seeing it every week now. Whether it be the Buffalo game in week 2, whether it be Dallas putting up, what did they put up today on Jacksonville? I mean,
Bodie. Yeah,
it's being able to put yourself in position to take advantage of the variance that the NFL has and not necessarily, I'm better at projecting yards per carry or yards per target than this guy.
Who'd you guys have at tight end?
I had no Joku. Boom.
Sharp.
so sharp.
Austin
And
Hooper, sharper.
Yeah.
Hooper smashed, bro.
Hooper
Hooper was
smashed.
actually the play.
He was the
Hooper
top
smashed.
scoring tight end of the day.
Damn.
Guess what?
Like-
It didn't matter. I salvaged like 4%. I got absolutely, and it's not like I scored like no points. Like 149 is not like death, but it's
No.
I don't know, man. I just got wrecked.
These days, I mean, that's it. So I was on Uzoma all week.
Yeah,
Like,
I was too.
Yeah, I was just like, dude, he's gonna get all the snaps. He's gonna get,
That was actually another benefit of the Mo Harris lineup was getting to Hooper.
Oh yeah, well, got to jam Hooper in. I mean, he was a home favorite with a huge team total. Like, I get the case for Hooper.
Well, the other case for Hooper is that he like actually looked to have a real role in the offense for the first time since he's been in Atlanta.
Yeah, he does that once in a while. I wasn't like ready to buy that as a thing. Like every once in a while he does this, but it's like
true.
So I mean, I liked Njoku because he'd been seeing a lot of targets ever since Baker got in the lineup, and when I just figured out I wasn't going to be able to go Murray and Zeke, I was going to have to go down and do Murray and Coleman. Then it was like, okay, I've got some extra money. What do I want to do with it? I don't want to play Maurice Harris because that's fishy. And then B, I can either pay up at DST off the Cowboys or I can pay a little more money at tight end. And I just said, screw DST. Like, I want a better tight end.
Yeah.
Njoku ran good.
I
mean, I'm tilting so hard that I played the stupid Bears defense and they gave up a career day to Brock Osweiler.
Dude, as a Bears fan, that was the most tilting. Like, when I heard
Kenyon Drake fumbles on the one, Cody Parkey goes and misses a field goal, and then Drake converts the clutch first down to get them into field goal range.
What an amazing game. What a great game that
actually,
was.
Honestly, as someone who doesn't care about the outcome either way, it was actually really good to see Kenyon Drake get put back in that game because he was distraught after that fumble. He was like crying on the sidelines.
He should be. He just dropped the ball. He was like ready to score a touchdown and win the game, and he just like gacked it up. Like, what an idiot.
True.
Yeah. So
I will say this though, just like don't play road defenses. I don't have the science for it. I don't have a good explanation, but like it's crazy how much worse defenses are on the road. Is it just because they don't get the calls?
I don't think it's just the calls. I think it's that they're better on offense because of communication. Like, think of how many things a road team has to do differently in terms of their signals, in terms of their communication when they're in a hostile environment, it's really noisy, etc. I think there's something to be said for that.
I think you guys are overreacting to. I think the Bears defense was a fine play. I know it didn't.
No, they were a fine play.
It was fine, yeah, but
I just don't think paying
shouldn't have been a priority, and too many people made it a priority.
Yeah, if anything was a mistake, it was paying up for them. It wasn't the fact that it was a road defense.
And it always
Cowboys were 21. What were they? 21.
This always happens when some horrible quarterback is named starter on like Sunday morning because of a quarterback injury. Like it's everyone just like thinks like, oh, I remember all those times Brock threw all those terrible interceptions, and they're like, oh yeah, Brock's way worse than Tannehill. When like Brock Osweiler's probably not even that much worse than Tannehill.
Sad to say, but it's actually probably
like Tannehill can move, and that's really the only difference between them.
And and Osweiler is very handsome. But regardless of all that, it was just, I think that changing your lineup around because you just have to get this one defense in, it's just almost always a bad idea. And I thought the Cowboys were great all week, and I decided to stick with them. It's like, dude, they're 2.3. They're at home. They're against Blake Bortles. Like, we can say everything we want about Osweiler, but like,
yeah, Bortles, like his throwing motion is so slow. It's like absurd.
Dude, we were talking about this last week. It's like a Japanese pitcher. It's like watching Tanaka pitch, watching him throw a freaking 10-yard out. It's crazy. Like, of course he takes a bunch of sacks. Of course people pick him off. Like, that thing takes 5 seconds to, like, just wind it up and throw it out. It's like, imagine at practice, the coaches have their stopwatches, and he throws one, they just look at each other, they shake their heads, they're like, shoot, man, like, what are we doing?
The Jaguars passed on taking Mahomes to take Leonard Fournette.
Good job. Good
Imagine D.D. Westbrook, Keelan Cole, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, T.J. Yeldon.
You'd be drafting D.D. Westbrook over Tyreek Hill in fantasy.
Oh, for sure. D. Westbrook, Blitnikoff, dude. Tyreek Hill was not a good college player. I need people he was when he was in D2, he had 900 total yards. He had a very weird career.
Yeah, his career seems to be blossoming now.
I mean, you put him in the captain slot.
Captain spot. Tyreek, it's lit. That was sharp. So what did you do at tight end, Nate?
In my intended cash lineup,
what would you have done if you didn't import the wrong lineup into all your cash games?
Hooper.
Okay.
Hooper. I just felt like getting as much exposure to that Atlanta game was the way to go. And even though I didn't want Tevin, once I got Tevin, Julio, it was obviously Jameis was the lock, but I didn't have any exposure to Ryan, who I wanted exposure to.
What were your receivers?
It was Julio Landry, Hooper, or Julio Landry. Who was my third receiver?
Equanimous St. Brown.
No, let me pull it up.
Oh, no, that's the showdown captain for tomorrow.
Showdown captain,
Godwin.
Who? Okay.
Godwin. He's one of those guys
who innately play.
Yeah, super.
Godwin's one of my favorites.
But he doesn't even play every snap and doesn't get that many targets.
Yeah. He got 2 targets last game.
His ADOT and partnering with Winston, I thought in this spot he was going to be.
Sammy and I are both pro Godwin. I think we're just surprised that you are.
Yeah, I like Godwin.
I've had Godwin a couple times. I had him week 1 with Fitzmagic. I've been for a while.
I just
the 2 teams that I was the highest on from a passing standpoint this week was the Tampa Bay team and then the Texans team. That's what I had the most exposure to in tournaments.
What happened to Jared Goff today? Just on a totally different matter. How did he only complete 50% of his passes?
So I was watching that game very closely, and what it seemed to me watching the game is that Denver was good at getting pressure, and once Cooper Kupp went out, you know how Kupp kind of is a safety valve underneath? He does a lot of blocking, he's kind of like a little H-backy.
Who played instead of him, Gerald Everett or Josh Reynolds?
Reynolds. They had Reynolds in a lot.
Huh.
So I did see Everett on the field a couple times, but Reynolds got a lot of run. But it felt like their offense really couldn't do anything from that point from a passing standpoint. And they just decided we're just going to give it to Gurley basically all the time. And that's what they did. They just gave it to Gurley the entire time. And Goff
you're saying you ran hot.
I'm just saying when you have an alpha on your team, you give them the rock, you go on the road, you win a game. That's how it works. Goff was. I was also
Tyreek the rock.
Yeah, I wish it had been snowing. I wish we had gotten a Gurley snow game so I could just bust Nate up.
Why does Nate I don't get this? Why is
the LaShawn McCoy thing from last year or 2 years ago?
Remember,
Nate said McCoy was a bad play last year, and I just jammed in 100% McCoy in cash, and then he broke off a 60-yard touchdown in overtime.
Basically, I was on a hardcore fade shady because it was people were on him, and then all of a sudden it was the worst snow and wind game that we've seen in forever. And so it was clear they weren't going to be passing the ball, and it was going to be hey, do you want 25?
Now I do remember.
You want 25 rushing attempts of 3.5 yards a carry because it's snowy and gross and 0 targets. And all it was 2-yard gain, 3-yard gain, 2-yard gain, 3-yard gain. And then he broke off a 60-yard rush, broke the 100-yard bonus, and got a touchdown.
It's just a matter of time, bro.
Yeah,
but it was exactly why it was not a sharp play is because there was no target volume, because there was no touchdown reliance at 7K. Snow game.
It was sharp. I was just hoping. I mean, this was probably at least 20% of the reason why I had to keep Gurley today is because I was sure it was going to snow, and then I could talk about this on the podcast here and roast you. So it had emotional equity as well as fantasy equity.
That's fair. Fair. That is worth it.
I mean, Nate, I know you hate to hear this, but Jonathan Bale's very rich man. He made a really good point when talking about the defenses don't matter thing, that when it comes to trying to be very accurate and make very accurate sort of decisions, you want to be pro data. But when it comes to making money in gambling, it's much better to use intuition and to be able to use your logic and what you know about the subject to make decisions.
Intuition play, Nate. That's what it was. It was an intuition play.
Maurice Harris was a field play.
Gotta have that intuition.
No, I mean, it's easy. It's very easy for data people to laugh at stuff like that, but I totally believe that DFS. There's some percentage of it that's definitely a field game.
Yeah,
except almost every player who's still around and playing at high level in cash games are team math.
I mean, Nate, I use optimal lineups. Like, I'm looking at this stuff all day, but at some point there are some decisions that got to be made. Like, right. I taking Yeldon out of the optimal lineups that I was running today. That was a decision I made that was that I felt very good about.
You got to look in your heart, bro. You got to look in your heart. And when you're a fish, your heart is very small. So it's very hard to look in there and see. But when you're an alpha, you got a big heart. You just look in there and you're like, that's the right play. There we go. Todd Gurley.
I don't know. Gurley's less expensive next week, Sammy.
I mean, so he was 20% owned. He will be 45% owned next week.
Who do they play?
San Francisco.
I mean, it totally depends on how much value opens up.
True. But they're
all
at
about
San Francisco.
Drew Brees is $5,700 though. I did see.
He must be on the road.
Yeah, he's at the Ravens.
Yeah.
But defense doesn't matter.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
The being on the road does matter though.
Does it? The defense doesn't, but
it does. It does.
The stadium.
It does for and also Taysom Hill is the Saints' best quarterback now.
Taysom Hill. I can't wait till we get some showdown. Taysom in the captain's spot.
Oh, Davis is so going to.
Look, if you think that I won't have Taysom in the captain spot, you don't know me. Nate, who's the captain for the Monday night showdown?
We already talked about this. CJ Beathard.
It is.
It's
Equanimous St. Brown.
You cannot take a 0 from your captain.
Well, why would the number 3 wide receiver get a 0?
Why would the number 3 wide receiver?
Why would he get a 0?
He's a number 3 wide receiver.
You see a play made last week.
Oh, do Rodgers number 3 wide receivers often take 0s?
Davis, what do you think his target projection can be? Safely.
5.
10.
No, not 10. If Cobb and Allison are out, he'll get 5 targets.
I think Allison's going to be in.
He's coming back from concussion protocol and a hamstring. I'm not so sure.
Okay, well, you still have Devontae, Jimmy Graham, Ty Montgomery, MVS.
Yeah, Ty Montgomery, big slot guy these days.
Yeah, it might have to be MVS in the captain spot.
Well, MVS they priced him like a real wide receiver. They did he is a real salary.
Yeah, he's at
St. Brown. I think is 800.
Yeah, St. Brown's 800 because he's going to be the 5th option on the team.
Nate, I wish I could explain to you how the math of showdown works. Did you fade James Washington in the Steelers slates?
I made money in showdown if that's what you're asking.
I mean, yeah, but not taking James Washington was bad. Even if you whatever the results happen, you just got to learn the math of showdown, dude.
Dude, I had the nuts on Monday night this week.
Yeah, the Traquan captain lineup was very nice.
I had the nuts.
Unfortunately, the Traquan captain lineup was optimal on every daily fantasy site that exists.
Yeah, you had to go a little more intuition to take first last week.
Well, no, I think you literally just had to I think if you ran the optimals and then excluded Kamara on most of the major websites, you probably had the nuts or close to it. Because it what the Saints showdown nuts was Traquan captain, Breeze, Ingram. I don't even remember.
Yeah. Did Meredith get in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
But
then the fish played Michael Thomas and
Michael Thomas is what burned me because I had Traquan, I had it was Ingram was the play for sure.
Yeah, getting Ingram in was and that stuff happens in showdown. You would think that would be obvious. Ingram's first game back, they're a big favorite. They're at home. Ingram probably pretty sharp. He was not very owned. A lot of people had Kamara though.
What'd you guys learn today? What'd you take away from it?
I learned that the Browns offense is actually pretty inefficient and they just like to run the ball and Todd Haley is not a good play caller, not scheming these guys open. They're all a little overpriced right now other than Njoku.
Nathan?
Just continuation of realizing that like ownership is going to continue to get higher than ever on these plays. The good plays are going to continue to be the highest. The good plays are going to be continue 50, 60, 70% when they used to be 20, 30, So it's like trading. And I just think I used to say things like ownership doesn't matter in cash, build the high. But actually it does. You cannot say that ownership doesn't matter in cash when your goal is to beat 50% of the field. When you put yourself in a leverage position in cash games, you are putting yourself in a minus EV position long term. The goal of cash games is not to be leveraged against the primary. So if you know a player is going to be 60% owned, like long term, it is not wise to be in the other 40% of that. Like
yes and no. And I agree fully with this take. I think if you play exclusively head-to-heads, where there's more variance, if you're playing mass head-to-heads as opposed to what a lot of people do, which is a lot of like double-ups, 50-50s, they have a mix of it. But if you're one of those people that plays all head-to-heads, then getting to the 90th percentile is more profitable than getting to the 60th, right? You do get extra profit from that. So I really think it depends on your game mix. But I think for most people, including myself, I think you're absolutely right with that point.
I do think that if you're close on some of these decisions, though, because everyone is trending more and more to similar teams, especially the higher you go, the more similar the teams are going to be because all those dudes are looking at the same information and looking at the same projections. There is a little bit of value in being like, well, this dude has no ceiling and getting the guy with the ceiling. Or like today, like doing something like playing Latavius instead of Tevin would have been something, I guess, that could have really differentiated your lineup without altering your floor all that much, I think.
Right, especially if you believe that Latavius was 700 less than Coleman. If you believe that he's just flat out a better play and that other people have it wrong, I think you're all right there.
Yeah.
Because you're basically wearing like 3-1. Tevin was 36% owned, Latavius about 12,
So what did you learn today, Sammy?
Oh, I learned a lot of things. A, don't fade the GOAT Todd Gurley. B, we were talking about this. Gronk is just dust. It's over. Like you look at his line and he caught for 97 yards.
No, he is completely dust though.
It's freaking over.
He's like the ninth option on that offense. Like I'm pretty sure James Devlin got a look at the goal line before Gronk did.
Like the only reason he got that one big play is because they like tricked them into thinking he was a blocker. You know what I mean? They're like, and the guy bit it because he was like, oh yeah, Gronk's just blocking again, and they like leaked him out underneath.
And Sony Michel,
good.
That man, that's an RB1 the rest of the way.
Yeah. Who was your RB1 this year, David?
David Johnson. I feel zero shame.
But David Johnson just shamed me for playing him at 5.4 in cash game.
Yeah, because we've learned that that's bad. We have 5 weeks of data to show that this is like potentially a historically bad NFL offense.
Yeah, but you should also feel bad about that, Davis.
Oh, I don't feel bad.
Bad process. No, it's terrible.
I'm not all that convinced it was that bad a process. Like maybe I need to wait.
Everything about his context had changed. Everything.
I need to think more about coaching stuff and how it affects outcomes like that in general. Yeah.
Well, obviously, look at the best coaches: Belichick, McVay, Andy Reid.
Also,
you want all the players from their teams.
I don't know how to. I'm saying I don't know. I didn't really know how to evaluate this guy Wilkes, and I guess that was probably my mistake.
He's no Bruce Arians. Like Arians was an aggressive gunslinger goat, and he wanted to go down the field, and they had a quarterback, Carson Palmer, that could make that work. So
2016 David Johnson was such a print fest for me.
It was a hell of a run, man. It was a hell of a run. Remember, it was just Gurley and
Lev. It was
DJ
Lev every week
for the first half of the season, and everybody was coming off 0 RB, and they kept paying up for receivers when those guys
we
were
would
like
have we would have been playing Maurice Harris, and we would have been glad to have gotten his 4 points. Like, to be quite honest with you, that's how things were in 2016.
All the days.
Like your $2,700 tight end gets like 4 catches, and you're like, oh, dude, no one's beating me today.
Lit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the Jets and the Cowboys are both scoring more than 40 points in their games.
Yeah. How do you think the Giants feel seeing Sam Darnold and the Jets putting up 42?
I think they're too dumb to know. They're too dumb. It's like you with your DJ take. They're just oblivious to like that they're actually.
You know what's
bad.
crazy is I saw some like New York beat writers today tweeting about how like the Giants actually made a bunch of win now moves in the offseason. They paid like 2 linebackers like a bunch of guaranteed money, like older guys.
Yeah, an old lineman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that team's a zoo. They're not smart.
It's a great way for us to end the show. Saquon at number 2 is a horrible pick. Good night, everybody.